Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom.
Thank you for listening to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoy.
Whoops, we're not going anywhere. So welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. So I've been doing Totally Awesome, Try Something New and Talk About It Tuesdays, and alternating with Totally Awesome Tips. And I'm not going to do either of those today. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about resilience and some of the ways that we build resilience, or sometimes we have to mobilize our resilience. And one of the ways of doing that is knowing your strengths and weaknesses and paying attention to them. So for me, a few of my strengths are I have a really good memory, that I have been through a lot of adversity, so I know that I can deal with it, and I am resourceful. Also, I have unlimited ideas. So those are some of my strengths. Some of my weaknesses are I'm a little impatient. I used to be much more patient. My adult son reminded me that I used to be patient when he was a child, but as an adult, I've become more impatient. So that's kind of one of my weaknesses now. I sometimes try to rely too strongly on past learning, and I think this is something that a lot of people do. We are all capable of learning new things, but we tend to get a little lazy and try to, use what we've learned in the past to deal with new situations or anything. One of the first times that I realized that I did this was when I was in college, and I was having a heck of a time learning statistics. And, I kept trying to relate it to some of the past math that I knew. And math is not my strongest subject, but I always did fairly well in it. And it just was not working. I was not learning statistics. And I finally had to kind of break down and realize that this was something that I kind of had to start from scratch on and learn something new. And once I got that idea into my head, I could learn it. It was easy. So those are some of the things that you have to be aware of, your strengths and weaknesses. And then use your strengths and kind of have a little bit of compassion for your weaknesses. First, have compassion for them, and then kind of kick yourself in the butt and, realize that sometimes you have to make some changes. So that's my little talk for today. We have a great show planned for today. My guest is Brain Arnold. And Brain is a former Mafia-trained Card Shark who escaped that life and became an ambassador and eternal life light life coach for the Kingdom of Light. Brian was raised among the Cree Nation Indians of northern Canada. He grew up poor, but by the age of 24, with only an 8th grade education, Brian made over $4 million. After working for the mafia and the lifestyle that involved, he became depressed and eventually suicidal. Fortunately, Brian found his way and life purpose and now helps others to find theirs. We have Brian here today. So hi, Brian.
Hi, Kate.
How are you?
I'm awesome, thank you.
So, I'm anxious to hear a little more about your story, and I'm sure everyone else is too. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to your current path?
Okay, so thank you for asking me, and thank you for having me on today. It's an awesome honor to be here with you. What started me off? Well, I was born in 1950. And in fact, tomorrow I celebrate my 70th birthday.
Wow, happy birthday.
Thank you. So April 22nd, 1950. So, and I never met my father, but my father apparently was American. My mother was Canadian. So I was born in Canada, and I was adopted out. And so when I was adopted, how I was adopted, my actual auntie adopted me. So I was adopted within the family, which was nice. And my father, who adopted me, my mother and father who adopted me, he was a fur trader with the Indians, with the Cree Indians. I'm a quarter Cree myself.
Okay.
And so I speak a little bit of the Cree language still, not that much, but I was raised in the bush. We had no running water, unless you run and got it yourself. But we had dog teams. The first 6 years of my life, 5 years, I guess it was, just about 6, I traveled by dog team and canoes in the summertime, dog team in the wintertime, 40 below zero. We had a 31-mile trap line. And then my dad traveled about 300 miles from reserve to reserve all around the nation, around the countryside in northern Canada, up in northern Saskatchewan. Very, very brutal, tough stuff. And we had no money. It was very humble beginnings. And then when I turned 6, my father sold everything. We had a mink ranch. We had a little mini sawmill. And then we also had the fur trading and so on back in that day. That was a big deal. I know today, is a whole different story because you can put on different clothes now. You can buy wool and all kinds of things. Back then, we had nothing but fur and or moose hide, deer hide. But we knew how. When you're raised with the Indian people, you learn how to live off the land and be very, very diligent in taking care of the earth. So I was raised very grounded. In fact, April 22nd is Earth Day. So I was raised, my birthday is Earth Day. And so I was raised very grounded. And then my father was quite an entrepreneur. And I started to be an entrepreneur at the age of 6. I started my own little trap line. And I had, trapping squirrels and weasels and stuff like that. And that was pretty good money back then for a kid to make $20-$30 a month back then was like $200-$300 today. So, and then by the age of 9, I worked all one summer and made enough money to buy a horse. And from owning the horse, I was able to now start a bigger trap line. So I had my own 7-mile trap line, and I was catching beaver and mink and wolves and coyotes and fox. And by the age of 16, I had made enough money to buy my own car, paid cash. And suddenly I decided I'm going to leave home. It was very hard. We had this little farm we had bought, and it was very hard back then. That's in 1966. I was 16. And I decided to go to work so I could send mom and dad $300, $400, $500 a month if I could make that much money, just to help to keep the farm going. So I went to work on the oil rigs at 16. I was supposed to be 18. Wasn't even supposed to be on there. So at the age of 16, I ended up going to work with 4 alcoholics. And they said, "Come on, kid, we're going to teach you how to be a man." And they started drinking, I mean, they didn't start, they were drinking all the time, 26 to 40 ounce of whiskey every night when they got off work. And so I started drinking. By the age of 18, I was getting into the bars and playing pool on the pool tables. And suddenly, age 19, I ran into one night, I was working now, age limit went to 19, that you could actually work in the bar. So I went to work in the bar. I was spending all my time there. Instead of spending money there, I may as well work there. So I started working around the pool tables. Well, all these rounders, what we call rounders, which were drug dealers and rough characters up in northern Canada, would come in there, and this was out in British Columbia. And one night I was serving 2 guys that I had never seen before, very sophisticated, well-dressed gentlemen. And unusual to have them sitting around the pool table. I knew they were sharp, but nice guys, you never expect it. And then I was invited to this party. So I went to the party, and a little while later, I find out there's a poker game going on in the back room. And there's 2 guys in there, and they're millionaires. And they had tried to pick up these 2 girls, prostitutes. And the girls were trained to bring these guys to these poker games. And if the guys lost a significant amount of money, like if they lost 100 grand that night, the girls made 10,000. They made 10% because they brought the guys there. And they didn't want to go with the guys. They just brought them there to the party. And so these 2 guys came up to me because I had been serving them drinks all night. And they said, the one guy says to me, he says, "Hey, kid," called me a kid. And that became my nickname, the Kid. He said, "Hey, kid, you want to sit in on a game? We'll give you $500. We just want you to come in, sit down at the table. We're going to take all the money from these guys. We're going to dump it onto you, and you're the one that's going to win all the money. But just know this, that it's not your money. We're doing this. We control the game. And you'll get all the money. We'll give you $500, but you give us the rest of the cash." Well, that night, I guess we won, I don't remember now, but it's maybe $30,000, $40,000. So I had to give them that cash, but they gave me the 500. So that night I made $500 for sitting in the game. They would take the money from these other 2 guys and dump it on me. So the other 2 guys would get upset with them, but they would dump the money on me, but they couldn't get upset with me because I wasn't doing anything. I was only playing, taking all their money, the guys. So the next day, they said, "Hey, you want to sit in on another game? We got another game going on. You did good last night, sit in." And they had these little finger signals. I mean, the whole game was rigged, okay? They couldn't win. Nobody could win. It's impossible. And so soon, I was traveling around with these guys. They wanted to go up to the Yukon and to Alaska and all over the countryside. And then suddenly I was with them like a few months, 3 months, and I wanted to learn how to do what they were doing, but I couldn't learn. I couldn't see it. I got their deck of cards. I couldn't figure out what they were doing. And so finally, one night, I kind of threatened one of them, and I told him I was going to chop his thumb off if he didn't show me what he was doing. And he knew I was pretty heavy duty boy and probably would do that. And so he showed me. I mean, if you're going to get your thumb chopped off and that's your only way of making a living, I guess you should. And so anyway, he showed me one move. And so I started practicing that for just about a year. And he said, "You can't make a move in the game. You don't do anything because we can get shot on the spot, instantly killed. So you don't dare make a move. You don't do anything." They threatened me, "Don't do anything." So I didn't do anything. And so I traveled with them for just about a year. And suddenly we get a phone call one of the guys, they're all dead now, so I can tell the story because I was the only one. I was the kid back then, and I'm the only one left of 7 of the probably most old school gambling shenanigans there was. And
Can I
so I'm the only one.
interrupt you for a minute?
Absolutely.
So when all of this was going on, did you know who they were? Did you know they were organized crime?
Not at the time, but I knew they were. They obviously were organizing these smaller games, but I didn't know it was to the magnitude of the connections with the mob. I didn't know that at the time.
Okay, so how did you actually get involved with them, with the
The
mafia?
mafia.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was the one guy got a call saying, okay, get in the Lear, we got a Learjet going to come in, pick you guys up. We need 3 guys. So they needed 3 of them to do this game. Big game was going to be knocked off. So that was my first introduction. So we get into this Learjet. Here I am, 20 years old, flying around in a Learjet with $400,000 or $500,000 in my pocket. And we fly into a specific city down in the U.S. And they pick us up with a big black limo and put us in the 5-star resort hotel, take us out for dinner, and give us the lowdown on what's coming down with this game. So they want to know what we want, and we want to know what they need, and so on. And so, bang, we go into the game. And we came out of that one that night with, I think it was $585,000. And they got half. They wanted half. So we give them their half, we take our half, and we split it 3 ways. That was our little piece of the action. That's how that worked. And I didn't realize it, and suddenly we were getting more calls there's different mafia groups, okay? And I don't say very much about anything. I don't name cities, I don't name groups, I don't name anything, because I don't need any heat either. But this is 45 years ago now. I haven't touched the cards in 45 years. I've never picked up a deck of cards after I had a very powerful experience, which we can talk about. So what happened was we kept getting calls, and it started to get very nerve-wracking for me. I did not like it. I was an innocent little farm boy from way up in northern Canada, and suddenly I'm stuck in the middle of the mob. And they're saying, hey, kid, come on in with us, and we'll take care of everything for you. We'll do everything. I said, I already got your backing. I don't need any more. I don't want to do this. And so finally I told the other guys, I'm getting out. I don't want to do this. I was 24 years old, and the only way I knew, I was so lost. I was so confused. I was so messed up that when I looked in the mirror, I didn't know the guy that I originally was. I had lost myself. I lost my soul. What if you gain the world and lose your soul? I had gained $4 million, and I didn't know who I was, and I wanted to end my life.
So did they just say, okay, goodbye, that's it?
No,
Or
it's not that easy.
okay.
But yeah, but you see, when I didn't get so involved with the mafia that I was controlled by them. They would just call us, we would come in, bang, we'd knock a game off, and we were gone the next day. We weren't like running around. I wasn't involved. They wanted me to be, but I did not want to be, and I just checked out. You want me to come in and do this service? I'll come in and do the service, but don't ask for anything more. Here's your half of the money, and we're out of here. I don't want nothing to do with it. And so that's how it came about. And then I went and bought my mom and dad's farm to try to sort my life out, because I was wanting to end my life, and I was grounded. I was raised very solid, and I was grounded, but I was so lost. The only grounding that I could get, that I knew of, where I could find some sort of safety, was I knew the bush. I knew how to survive in the bush. I knew how to survive on the farm with the cows and the land. I knew how to work that stuff. I wanted to go back to my basics and find myself. And so I bought the farm. Mom and dad moved into town, and I was suicidal, but they didn't know it. And nobody else knew it. They didn't have shrinks back then, and psychologists and psychiatrists and all that stuff. There was no such thing back then. This is
Well, not where you were probably.
not where I was.
You did
There
have,
wasn't anything. No, not out in the bush with the Indians and way
right.
up in northern. There might have been something down in the States, but there was nothing up there. I mean, like there was nothing. So I wasn't going to look and, when you're in that state of mind, you don't go looking for somebody to talk to them about your problems. You take care of it yourself. And so for me, it was like, just shoot myself. That's the end of the story. And I was being tormented by demons all the time. I remember feeding my cows and the horses. I had bought 300 head of cattle, 6 horses. And so I was up on the barn and I was feeding the cows and the horses. I threw some bales down and I came down the ladder, and I came down about 4 rungs of the ladder, and I was just sitting there. It was a beautiful day. I'm looking out over the barnyard, and I sat there on my ladder, and it was like these demons were just tormenting me in my mind. They were just like, kill yourself. You're no good for nothing. You've destroyed lives. You are no good. Kill yourself. And it was just like these voices were coming at me and in my mind and in my heart. And I was so mixed up and confused and depressed. And I just said, that's it. I'm going to end it right here. So I came down off the ladder and I walked across the barnyard and I walked over to the door and I was going to open the garage door. I always had a gun inside. And so I went and I just put my hand down by the door. My hand was about to open the door, and this car, I believe God sends angels. And it was like an angel for me. It was like this car pulled into the yard right at that very moment. And I never seen this person before. And there's not very many people out there. I mean, the whole town was 1,500 people, maybe. And I'd never seen this guy. He was a stranger. And he pulls up beside me just as I'm going in the garage. And he says, he sticks his head out the window. And he says, excuse me. He said, I'm looking for a farm. He said, the guy's name is Joe Saplinka. He said, where's his farm? He said, I can't seem to find it. I said, oh, Joe. I said, you just go out to the road here, turn left, go 1 mile, 1.5 miles, and he's on the right-hand side of the road. The guy says, can't be. He said, I've been down there 3 times now, and I can't find it. I said, well, he never moved the farm. It's still there. You just go back down there. He said, oh, okay. And he turned around and he left. And when he left, it just shocked me that I was that close to ending my life. Going in, taking the gun, and ending my life. And I had 3 other friends who had done that, had ended their lives. And so it wasn't foreign to me. And it was like, but so anyway, that was the shock that that was my first intervention, so to speak, I guess, that intervened for me to not take my life at that moment. A couple of days later, my parents came out to the farm and Mom said, why don't you come into town on Sunday and maybe go to Mass? I was raised Roman Catholic. And she said, go and then come over for lunch. Well, I'm not a religious person, still not. I'm not a religious person today either. I'm very spiritual, but I'm not a religious person. There's a big difference. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was that Sunday, that was the following week, and I was still really shaky. I was like still thinking of ending my life. I was still in big depression. And so I was really messed up. And so that Sunday morning, I didn't even want to go into church or anything, but I thought, for Mom and Dad, I will do that out of respect. And so I ended up, I jumped into my pickup to take off and run into town. It's about 18 miles out of town on this farm. And when I got in my truck, I noticed there was about 50 head of my cows were out on the road. And I thought, how did they get out there? So I ran around, I rounded them up. I noticed the gate was knocked over, so I just rounded them up, put them back in, and closed the gate. They hadn't tore the fence down, so I didn't have a whole bunch of work to do. So I closed the gate, and I jumped in the truck, and I took off. But that made me 15 minutes late. It was mass church started at like 9:30, and I got there at 9:45, and I thought, I don't want to go in. I'm not going in there. I saw mom and dad's car there, but I said, I'm not going in there, because if I went to a priest and started telling all my sins, I'd be there for 3 hours and hold the whole service up. So I was such a bad character that it was like, no, I'm not going in. So I kept on going, and I decided I was going to go to my mom and dad's house. And so I pulled up to this stop sign, and it was right beside the police station. And I pulled up to the stop sign, and around the corner comes this young man that I recognized, that I had gone to school with 8 years earlier. And he was walking toward my truck, and he walked up to me and he said, Brian, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in years. What are you doing? How are you doing? I said, oh, I'm doing great. Bought my mom and dad's farm. Meanwhile, I'm suicidal. But I said, I'm doing great. You see how we can lie to ourselves? And so we put on a good face up front anyways. So I said, oh, I'm doing great, you know. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I was just going to go to church, but I'm a little bit late. I said, you know, I'm just heading over to the house. And he said, well, why don't you come into our little church? It's starting in about 5-10 minutes. I said, no, I'm not going in there. Are you kidding me? I'm a Roman Catholic. We're the only ones going to heaven. You know, I'm not going into your church. Forget it. He goes, oh, but he said, you should come in. We got a little black preacher man from America up here. And this guy brings down fire, it seems like. He's amazing. And I said, what's a black guy from America doing in a little dinky little Indian town out here in the middle of nowhere? What the heck is he doing up here? He said, you got to come in and hear this guy. And I said, no. I said, I go in there and you guys start messing with me, I'll level the whole works of us. And he said, don't be silly, Brian. Come on, come in. So I went in. And that's where I had a very powerful spiritual experience. It was the most powerful, amazing thing that happened to me. And I accepted the Lord. And what happened to me was, it was so powerful that it was like this 500-pound gorilla of darkness came off my back. Because this little black preacher man said, if there's anybody here who feels troubled and wants help and wants prayer, I want you to come up here to the front and talk to me. And I walked up there and I stuck my finger right in his face. And I said, listen, mister, if this Jesus you're talking about can save me and help me, I will serve him all the days of my life, because I'm ready to kill myself today. I'm ready to end my life now. I don't know when I'm going to do it. And I was in desperate situation and I needed help bad. And he said, well, let's pray a simple little prayer. And I did. And that was it. It was like this 500-pound gorilla came off my back. It wasn't religion. It was a powerful spiritual experience. And it transformed my life so much right there, instantly on the spot. I lit up like a light bulb. And inside of me was where the transformation happened. And suddenly I started weeping and crying. Everybody's crying. And I took my cards and I threw them in the garbage. That moment, because I always carried a deck with me. And I threw the cards in the garbage and I said, I will never pick these cards up again. And I haven't. In 45 years, I have been free from depression, oppression, possession, you name it. I got delivered and I got set free in my life. And I have been sharing my story. It's just my story. I'm not saying what people have to do or don't have to do. I share my story, what happened to me. And if that helps somebody, great. And that's my story.
Yes. Isn't it interesting how, you were lost there and you were so determined that you were going to kill yourself, but you were looking for a reason to live.
Absolutely.
Because I'm going to kill myself, but first I have to, catch all these cows and put them back in the pan.
Well, we have to live in reality too,
Yes.
we're living here on this earth, right?
Yes,
So,
but it is interesting how life is is like that. You know,
Yes. Yes.
it intervenes.
Yes. And
So
so,
I have a few questions about
yes.
your story. So what was the appeal of gambling to you? Did you actually like gambling or not?
Not really. I wasn't a gambler. You see, when we went into these games, it wasn't a gambling. We were stealing. This wasn't gambling. It was like it was just like taking candy from a baby. It's so professionally done. These guys were so professional that, like, I remember guys coming back dropping two. We liked drug dealers because that was our favorites, because they would always come in with a couple $100,000 and we'd just take it from them because we didn't want to hurt little people. We weren't interested in $1,000 from a guy who's working. We wanted $200,000 from a drug dealer. We'll take that money gladly, because to us it didn't care. It was just cash. And I remember one guy coming in who was a drug dealer. He dropped $600,000 in 4 weeks. 600,000, okay, and 200,000 each time he came, 3 times, trying to win his money back. And we took it, and yet he never even caught on to what was going on. I mean, it was that professionally done. Okay, so I wasn't a gambler. We weren't gambling. We could just take the money, and we knew how to do it.
So the big appeal was the money.
It was the money at the time and the adventure. For me, I'm just a kid. I'm 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. To me, it's just excitement. Lear jets, 5-star resort hotels, steak and lobster, wine, woman, and song. I was just living the life of Riley. I was having a blast.
Yeah.
Till it caught up with me.
So was it hard to walk away from all that money? And I understand you went into the housing industry after that. You know.
Yeah. Well, it was hard at first, and then I sold the farm because I didn't want to farm. I knew that. I sold the farm. I went to the farm and bought the farm because I wanted to try to find myself. I was lost and I couldn't find myself, and that was the only way I knew out. And but once my life was transformed instantly. I just knew I didn't want to farm. I wanted to do something. So then I went into actually the housing industry and started framing houses, and I went to work. I stopped stealing. I transformed. My life changed, and I made the decision to change it. But then there was a long way out. How do you come out of that? How do you transform your life? That's a big question.
So after that experience in the church, then you weren't depressed or suicidal anymore, or was there a progression to really get?
No, that happened pretty much instantly. I was instantly transformed, what I call coming out of the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. And so I was instantly transformed there. The work was in my spirit and in my heart. It was a miracle that happened. But after that, it's a progression after that. There's a main deliverance. And then there's like, you got to work at growing and renewing your mind and renewing your thinking to right thinking, because it was all perverted into darkness and destruction before. I was going the wrong direction, and I suddenly spun around and it was a higher power than me.
Mm-hmm.
Much higher.
And the whole finding, okay, what am I going to do with my life now?
Right, exactly. Now it's a growth.
Okay, so I have a question. It might be a hard question, or it might be one you've thought about before. So what did you learn from your darkest moments that carried you forward through the difficult times in the future?
You mean right now?
No, when you went through those really dark times back then, what did you learn that carried you forward and helped you in the future?
Well, back in the dark days of my life, I didn't know I was living in darkness. I just was having a good time. But suddenly, when this depression hit me, I didn't know how to get out of it. I was lost and I was really looking for answers. And I was, I had five major questions in my life. Like, number one question was, who am I? I mean, I know my name is Brian Arnold, but that is only my name. But who am I? Like, who am I as a being? I'm a spirit being. But how did I get here? Number two, because I didn't know who I was or how I got here. I knew I came from my mother's womb, but that wasn't the questions I was asking. I mean, it's like we have all these species on the planet. Okay, that's an elephant, that's a giraffe, that's a monkey, that's a fish, that's a bird. These are all different animal species. But what is man? What's the difference between man and animals? Animals have the instinct to survive. Man has the ability to create. So we have two kingdoms, four kingdoms. We have the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and two kingdoms that rule over that, man kingdom over that. So I didn't know I was lost until I was found, I guess. That's a difficult question, yes, but you just got to find your way through. You just got to find your way through. And for me, I did. That's what happened for me. And ever since then, it's been nothing but growth, 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 growth. 45 years I've been growing now.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's
It's
been an
interesting how
amazing,
that never ends.
never ends. Yes,
Yes.
amazing growth. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you because we're going through some kind of dark and uncertain times right now, and people
Yes.
in general are very, fearful and uncertain about what the future holds.
Yes.
So do you have any, insight or advice that you would give to people in general about facing uncertainty?
Yeah. Well, number one, to me, number one, the most important thing that a person can do is personal self-discovery, knowing who you are, knowing how you got here, knowing what your purpose is in life. And I hear a lot of people talking about purpose, but what's a definition of purpose? Let's go a little deeper on that one. And then I had five major questions that I was asking myself before I shot myself. Was, is there life after death? Because if there is, and I kill myself, like, where am I going? Is there eternal life after death? And then, can I choose that? How do I choose life after death? Where is my destiny? What is my purpose? I mean, there's got to be more to life than 40 hours a week for 40 years and then die. I got to have more purpose in life than just that. And now my purpose in life now is to help other people come through these very dark times. And so what I did was, if I may, I put together, because I was in the gambling and into the cards, I created 5 decks of cards. But these are custom crafted decks of cards that help people through what I came through, how to personally discover themselves and how to figure out how to work in life. And I actually, out of a deck of cards, which is 52 cards in a deck, and there's 52 weeks in a year. And so I figured 1 card a week, if you could learn and understand 1 card a week and 1 saying a week, could transform your life in 1 year. And it's not overwhelming. It's not too much. And so for your listening audience, what I would like to do is give away 26 of the first 52 cards. I would love to give your audience 26 of those for free on me. And all they need to do is go to my website, kingdomproblemsolvers.com, and they can download instant access to 26 cards that would help them through this fearful time. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt right now. Fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of death, all these fears. Well, these cards answer how to get out of that and overcome your fears. There is no need to, fear, the word fear is false evidence appearing real. And so we see a lot of evidence of a lot of stuff scary out there for people. And I try to calm their fears and say, listen, there's nothing to be afraid of, not even death, when you know life. I know life. I already know eternal life. So then that means fear is gone. I have no fear, none. So if people want that kind of understanding in their heart, you need to have that in your heart. And these 26 cards help to guide you there. You have to make your own choices in life. You have to decide for yourself. You choose your own eternal destiny. I can't do a thing for you, but I can help guide a little bit with what I've been through. And these 26 cards do that to get you started.
Okay, well, thank you for that offer, and the audience can take advantage of that. I have 3 last questions for you.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
one is, who do you look up to? Are there any people that inspire you, that you look up to?
Yeah, there are people out there that I appreciate. I'm very, very selective in who I follow because you got to be very careful nowadays with there's so much deception going on out there that you don't know what to believe. There's 7 billion people, 7 billion voices. Which voice do I listen to? And which ones are telling the truth and which ones are going to lead you down the garden path. See, the first guys that I met wanted to get me into that game, and I thought they were great guys. I was just a young guy. I didn't know any better. So I kind of followed that guy. And what ended up was I ended up in the mafia.
Yeah.
So you never know who to really follow. But I guess one fellow that I like to follow, he's passed away now. His name was Derek Prince. And he was a very gentleman scholar, a real scholar, and really knew the scriptures. And for me, I study the scriptures. I really study the scriptures. I guess the
Okay.
Lord is my number one person that I follow.
Okay.
He's the one I look up to.
So what inspires you and makes you hopeful or optimistic for the future? That's a hard question, in that we are going through some dark times, but
Yes.
what makes you hopeful for a better future?
Right. Well, my hopefulness and future, the only thing that I have is the Lord. And I'm not religious. Please understand that. I want your audience to know I'm not a religious person. There's a difference when we talk about the Lord, but that sounds like that's a religion, but it's not a religion. You see, the Lord is not a religious person. He's a spiritual entity. The same as the Bible is not a religious book. It's a spiritual book. I have a little acronym that I throw out there. The Bible is basic information before leaving Earth. Basic information before leaving Earth, because we have one thing we can be guaranteed of, 2 things we can be assured of. One is we're going to die, and then we don't know where we're going after that. I do, but a lot don't. And number 2 is you're going to pay taxes. So those 2 things are, we know that we're either going to die or we're going to have to pay taxes. Those 2 things are for certain. And so we all are destined for an eternal destiny some way or another. And that's where my hope lies, was my life was so transformed and so changed and continued for 45 years now. This is not 4 or 5 years and I'm going back. I overcame, I never have touched cocaine since. Back then, $1,000 a day in cocaine at times. Never touched cocaine again. No drunkenness anymore. No more gambling. I was delivered and set free. My hope is in that, in the Lord. Okay, that's the only hope I have. And it's in me. And I've got a proven track record to prove that. Now, has it been easy? No. I went through 2 marriages. That's not easy. I lost my first son and daughter. That's not easy. These things that I have come through, that's not easy. But I never shot myself. I never killed myself, and I overcame. And so my encouragement for the future for people is they need to know who they are, and it starts with personal self-discovery in those 26 cards.
Okay. Well, the final question I ask everybody on the show is, if you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
You get to know yourself and know your enemies. You
Oh,
get to know yourself
okay.
and know your enemies, because there are many enemies and they're invisible. Fear is invisible. Uncertainty and doubt is invisible. Hatred, anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, these are all invisible enemies of your soul.
Yes, I would say that
And
that's true.
yeah,
So
and so, you need to know yourself, know who you are, and know your enemies so that you don't get wiped out. Don't let fear take you over until you get so terrified you're scared to go out. You're afraid to go do anything. You're afraid to start another business. I'm 70 years old. I'll start 3 more businesses before I die, probably. I don't know.
not until tomorrow. Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. Would you like to give your website one more time?
I would love to. Thank you. It's Kingdom, KINGDOM, KingdomProblemSolvers.com. And there's 26 free cards there for you with an instant download. And thank you, Kate, so much for this time. I appreciate
Okay,
you very
well,
much.
thank you for telling your very interesting story. And I'd like to thank the listeners for listening today. We have another great show planned for next week. My guest next week will be Anne Logue, and the show is called When Life Yells Plot Twist. And we're going to hear about how she was on one path and then, life just kind of led her in a different direction, and we'll find out what she's doing now. And then this Saturday, I am doing a special panel broadcast. And the panel broadcast is, it's called The Silver Linings in Adversity. And my guests will be Dr. Faith Brown, Anne Logue, Mona Green, and Suzanne Baxter. And they are, Faith is a psychologist, among other things. Anne is a life coach. Mona is a life coach. And Suzanne is a psychologist. And we're just going to have a very frank conversation about getting through the adversity that everyone is facing now, and some of the kind of unexpected silver linings that come out of this and may actually lead us in a more positive direction going forward in the future. So we've gone a little overtime here, and I'm just going to say goodbye for now and listen to the broadcast on Saturday. That will be 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then the show next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to soulfire wisdom. Remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.